Good morning. Welcome. My name is Kurt Bauman. I'm the Executive Director of the Nonprofit and Community Assistance Center and a board member with the Association for Fundraising Professionals, Northeastern Pennsylvania chapter. Thank you for joining us today for our Meet the Funders program. We do this program once a year, and it's, again, designed to help us in the nonprofit sector better get to know the foundations and grant makers that serve our community. So today's format, we'll have brief presentations from each of our funders, followed by lunch, and once people get the lunch outside, you'll bring your lunch back in, and I'll facilitate a question and answer session. I've given the funders a list of questions that we typically ask at this, so if people are shy, I'll ask the questions on your behalf, but hopefully most of the questions are coming from you all. Before you, there's a packet of information, including the agenda. One mistake on the agenda, I apologize. Laura Duchesse's name, it's Laura, not Lori. Okay? Most of you know that, I'm sure. Also in the packets are copies of two of the PowerPoint presentations that our funders are using. We also have an evaluation in there. We really appreciate your feedback on how we did with the event, with the information leading up to it, registration, and all the materials in there. And we're also looking for funders for future presentations. We are shooting high. I did reach out to Kresge this year, and I was very close to the person I knew at Kresge. I met at a GEO conference, and she has roots in Pittston. However, she's on maternity leave. She works in their education department. So again, we are trying to get national funders, statewide funders, and other funders interested. So I really appreciate your feedback on the evaluation form. So with that, I'd also like to thank our AFP board members that are here. If the AFP board members would please stand and be recognized. Thank you. At the bottom of the agenda, there's a few announcements on upcoming programs. As you can see, on June 20th and 21st, the Scranton Area Foundation is having their Community Needs Forum in Scranton. On June 26th, AFP is having a Day of Giving Basics Lunch and Learn at Glenmar National Golf Club. That event will be live within the next week. And then we put a save the date on there for National Philanthropy Day Luncheon, which is November 16th. We're currently collecting nominations for National Philanthropy Day now, so if you have anybody you'd like to nominate for the awards in that program, please see myself or one of the other board members at the program. And lastly, we are accepting applications at the University of Scranton for the Nonprofit Leadership Certificate Program. It's an 11-session program that kicks off in August and runs through June, and designed to create deeper benches for local nonprofits for their executive teams. We're looking to find young talent within the nonprofit sector and helping them strengthen their leadership skills, work on an internal project at their nonprofit, and then also work on some basic skills to make them more well-rounded. If anybody has questions about that, they can see us afterwards. So why are we here today? Obviously, here in the nonprofit sector, we're here to make positive change. We're here to serve those in need, and we're here to fulfill our missions. We can't do that without funders. We need donors, foundations, grant makers to help us achieve our mission. So this program is designed to help the nonprofits in the room develop relationships with our local foundations. And relationships are important. We did our best to provide as much information about each grant maker and each person at the foundation in advance, so we don't cover biographies and pieces like that. Rather, what I've done is I've asked each one of the panelists some questions of things that aren't on their bio to make it more informal. Not speaking for everybody in the room, but I am not the most gregarious person. Sometimes conversations are difficult, and I think the more you know about people personally can help make it easier to have those conversations about your nonprofit, the services you provide, and what you're looking to achieve at the nonprofits that you work for. So with that being said, I'll introduce our panelists just by name and then give you a couple of interesting pieces about each one of them. So we have Laura Duchesse with the Scranton Area Community Foundation, the NEPA Health Care Foundation, and the Spitz Foundation. Latita Smith with the Moses Taylor Foundation, Mike Paney with the Wells Fargo Foundation, and Kevin Rogers representing the Margaret Briggs Foundation. Kevin also works with PNC Bank. So one of the things I asked for them is to share with us something unique about them personally that wouldn't be in a professional biography. So Laura noted that she's a master at memorizing song lyrics. So I know we don't have a lot of karaoke bars or restaurants, but if we do, if that opportunity arises, that's the place to pitch your project to Laura, okay? So Kevin noted two different facts. First, his family are huge IndyCar fans. And secondly, Memorial Day weekend is like Christmas in their family. So this is a big weekend coming up, so thank you for sharing your time with us Thursday, and hopefully there's a margarita, a Corona, or something in your future by 3 p.m. So, Mike, as a banker, enjoys drawing house plans, and I think your family has a construction business as well? So in addition to helping people find finances, lending, and also foundation, he also helps people build houses. So thank you. And Latita did this last year, so she didn't share a fact with us, but why don't you share last year's for those that weren't here? Do you remember? It involves a wedding with...
Oh, well, thanks for the cue, because I have no memory. I guess that I had the opportunity to attend a wedding almost 10 years ago of a Romanian diplomat and his wife, who is a New York model. So, and I don't know either of them, but I was part of a fellowship program, and so I had the opportunity to attend their wedding in Bucharest, which was extraordinary.
Good. Thank you. Okay, so their favorite college class. Laura's was interpersonal communication. Do you remember the professor's name?
I do.
Good.
University of Scranton.
Awesome.
Still there.
Mike was cost accounting, so he's found his true calling, correct? Okay. Latita's is English. Again, a lot of reading, especially in rainy weather. I'm sure she's gotten through multiple books this spring. And Kevin is, again, another public accounting. So you've found your happiness spot. You want to change it now? You can.
No, that's not what it is. I went to the University of Scranton, and in between the fall and the spring semester, they have intercession.
Okay.
And where you can take a compressed class, and there was one class where all you did
That's right.
watch war movies. You watch war movies for 4 weeks. John Earl was the professor, and it was the best class I ever took.
That's right.
It would not have been cost accounting.
I remember reading that. I remember reading it now, Kevin, and thinking, geez, does that class still exist? Because I'd like to take it.
I have a question for Kevin. Was my 12-year-old son in that class? He loves that stuff.
No.
All right.
Your 12-year-old son wasn't
So, okay, last question that I asked about, well, I asked a few more questions, but the last one I'll announce today is your first job out of school. So Latita's was community educator at Planned Parenthood. Okay, Laura's was a marketing analyst at a .com startup. Mike was a credit analyst and loan reviewer. And Kevin was a staff accountant at a local firm. So that's all. So hopefully that gives you all icebreakers as you get to know your funders better and a little bit about them personally. So with that, I'd like to turn and let her talk about the 3 foundations she's representing.
Thank you, Kurt. And I'm thrilled to be here at Meet the Funders. It's very timely for us because for 2 of the foundations, we're just approaching the cycle where our LOIs, our letters of intent, are due. So not only is it an opportunity to make sure that if there's anyone in the audience that's interested in applying, that you're aware of the dates, but also an opportunity to talk a little bit more about the various foundations and give some background in all of them, and particularly one of them that's newer to the community, and probably somewhat of a mystery to many people because we're still learning a lot about it. So I think that that's timely. So I will start out with, all right, let's see. I'm just making sure that I am operating it correctly. At least it's not just me. That's always good. Okay. I'll start out with the Scranton Area Foundation, because obviously, you know, that is the organization, the foundation that's been in our community since 1954. There's a long history with the Scranton Area Foundation being a grant maker, a steward, a charitable resource, and a catalyst. And we are the community foundation, the public community foundation of Lackawanna County, which means that we exist because in 1954, the Scranton family made a very generous $1 million bequest to begin the foundation, and that planted the seed for many other charitable philanthropists in our community to follow. So that million has grown now to about 38 million because of 175 charitable funds that we are now able to manage because of the generosity in our community. And so that's really what most people know historically about the Scranton Area Foundation. You know, our role as a grant maker, our role as, yeah, any luck? All right, thank you. Okay, thank you. Our role as serving as somewhat of a community trust for the community. And that's historically what a lot of community foundations were looked at as, you know, this community trust of resources. What I'll talk a little bit as I move forward in the presentation is just how the role for community foundations have really changed nationally and how we're expected to and we're charged with doing additional things in the community. So again, we go back to the fact that we're a steward. One of our main goals is ensuring that, you know, when we're entrusted with the philanthropic resources of donors, that, you know, we have an independent board of governor that oversees all of the aspects of the management, the governance, the investments of the foundation. We make sure that we're prudently investing those resources and that our returns are always above benchmark. As a grant maker, you know, we're not only responsible for the grants that come out of the funds that are established with us, whether they're donor-advised funds, scholarships, donor-designated funds, but also from many of what you know of our grant-making cycle, which is our unrestricted or community needs funds. And that's, you know, when we put out a call for grants, the majority of them are coming from that unrestricted grant-making cycle. So there's two different types of grant processes we're managing. As a charitable resource, that's one of the things we've been moving more towards in terms of how can we serve as a partner to professional advisors when they're having those relationships, those conversations with their clients about philanthropic planning. You know, how can we be at the table with them and helping to ensure that those resources stay in our communities and they're invested in the organizations that we know and connect with, you know, all of you. And that's why the relationship between a community foundation and partnering organizations in the community is so important, because we can really help to provide the insight about the innovative things that are going on here, and there are so many of those things. And probably one of my favorite parts of it is the catalyst, the convening, the role of the community foundation as a change agent in the community, and the opportunity for us to be a convener of a variety of organizations to be able to help drive systemic change. And that's something that I think we've moved more into as we've followed the trends nationally for community foundations. So I went a little bit into how we started and how we've evolved in terms of, you know, incorporation, et cetera. And so that's where we are now. We're a public community foundation, and we serve Lackawanna County residents, but we're completely a charitably funded organization. I also covered a little bit about our charitable funds and the different types that we cover. Some of the organizations that you represent may have an agency endowment with the Scranton Area Foundation. And there's a variety of different types of funds that we manage. And obviously that's where about 60% of our assets lie, in restricted funds. The other 40% is unrestricted. We've been growing in terms of staff simply because we've been growing in terms of initiatives and assets. And so I'm proud of our team. I think we have a really great, dedicated team. Each person has a specific focus area. And so, you know, Donna Pretko is our Director of Finance. Rachel Drozdowski, who some of you may know through Match Day and other things, our Director of Philanthropy. She's responsible for working with donors and managing their funds. Maggie Nasser, Projects and Administration, handles aspects of women in philanthropy, the Center for Capacity Building, and Restricted Fund Management. Kathy Fitzpatrick, who is our Grants and Scholarship Administrator. Brittany Pagnotti, who I believe is here, and she's our new Communications Manager. Dana Hunter, our Administrative Coordinator. And Vivian Williams, who's new as well, and she's our Transportation Coordinator, and she's heading up the NEPA Equitable Transportation Council that I'll talk a little bit as one of our initiatives. Independent Board of Governors, representative of a variety of community leaders from everything from medicine, finance, education. Some of our board, which is charged in the foundation bylaws, are appointed by partnering organizations such as the United Way, the Chamber of Commerce, the President Judge, the commissioners, et cetera. So our board is truly diverse and representative, and we need that in order to be able to be knowledgeable about community issues. So when we look at our grant cycles, and we think about the community needs grants, the grants that, you know, when you think about applying to the Scranton Area Foundation you're going through, we're looking for a variety of aspects. We're looking for innovative ideas, projects. We're looking for capacity building. We're looking for grants that show collaboration. But we also are we recognize that nonprofits are challenged to just be able to sustain the programs that work. I mean, I think that that's something that we all know is always a challenge. And while, you know, our committees will look at a grant and they'll say, you know, we'd like to see some organizations have some levels of sustainability, there's an awareness that organizations can come back for funding that works for programs. So that's something that I think we can all say in the foundation world, that we know that there is a need, maybe particularly in our region even, because I think, you know, sometimes our region is challenged with the number of foundations or corporate funders, that foundations are relied on sometimes to fill those gaps. So our grant cycle, we have two unrestricted community needs grant cycle, and community needs kind of talks about everything. Community needs is the circle of what our foundation supports. You know, we're not specifically a health funder or an arts funder or a specific sector funder. We fund the entire circle of what the community is, because that's really what a community foundation in our mind represents. What it means sometimes is, in order to fill that circle and make sure that all of the areas have a percentage allocation to it, that we can't always make the most sizable grants, because the amount of requests that we get coming into the foundation are significant. So we try to do the best we can in terms of funding innovative projects, funding, you know, operations capacity. We really try to split that in the circle. So what we did is we have two grant cycles. One is in the spring, one is in the fall, and that is community needs grants up to $25,000. There are, though, what we've instituted as critical needs grants. And critical needs grants are instituted because, you know, many organizations have these unforeseen circumstances that come up. Whether it's flooding, a fire, a roof leak, a tree fall. I mean, those are almost catastrophic in a sense, but that was really what the critical needs grants was instituted for. What we also have is community needs grants at a lower threshold that really isn't advertised significantly. that are on a rolling basis. So if something comes up, I'm going to give an example of something that's a capacity-based initiative that you didn't plan for and you cannot wait till September to do. But it doesn't really qualify as critical needs because it's not catastrophic in a sense of how, critical needs would be determined. We would encourage you to contact us. We don't set up parameters of timelines to make life more difficult. We realize that things happen in between these time frames. But that's just where we look at grants over a certain threshold. So I do want to point that out because we're looking for an effective way to communicate that to the community. That's something we've been discussing. So I wanted to point that out as well. So I go into a little bit about the changing roles of community foundations. We do go beyond a grant maker, and I think that that's one of the things that, at least since I've been in the role, that I feel like we've taken even more of a position on. But we can only do that with partnering organizations, other foundations, nonprofit partners, governmental organizations. But I will say that everything that I hear in the field when I'm fortunate enough to go to conferences and converse with other funders is that, we don't have the luxury anymore of not being a convener in the community to help drive change. And I think a lot of it is because we are an independent entity. We're not perceived, nor do we have specific agendas in certain areas. Our agenda is the good and the advancement of the community in various areas. And so we work to kind of bridge gaps between organizations to drive these issues forward. This could be taking a position on transportation, it could be capacity building, but could also be a specific issue that, your nonprofit is facing. Maybe a great program that we've seen identified, and we see you coming back for funding at a lower level, and we think, yeah, maybe we can only provide a $15,000 grant for this, but we know this is a fantastic program, and we know it's benefiting the community. So how can we help to catalyze other funders around this and help you to think about how you can elevate this program or initiative? I've been seeing that happen a lot more often. There are so many wonderful programs that organizations in our community are doing that provide so much good to the community. And so we're really trying to use our role as to how can we help to bring in and create awareness for other funding sources to help you move that program forward. So that's something else that I really want to point out because, one of the most recent things we did with that was for the Bhutanese community. Specific communities that are facing certain challenges. How can we pull funders, resources together to really get them to a point that they can address a lot of the language barriers, the communication skills, and I think that was just one example. Another one I think is going to be related to the issue of women in prison and aspects related to education and issues around what women are dealing in prison. I think we hope to do something around that in the future as well. So it's just some smaller scale examples of how we can convene. And then we have what I would say are more initiatives. And these are things that we probably put more time, more resources, more focus areas, more staff time into driving forward. And one of these is, NEPA Match Day, which some organizations in our room have probably participated in. And this was our 4th year for NEPA Match Day. And we started NEPA Match Day because it's really a way for the community to understand that everyone can be a philanthropist and that collectively, when people pool their resources together and you have a time frame, wonderful things can happen. So it was really started as a way, as kind of a play on the Giving Day theme, with the hopes that it becomes a regional initiative, that it isn't just Scranton, but we start to get other foundations involved, and we start to say to people in our community, the Scranton Area Foundation will contribute X amount of dollars, and the goal is to incentivize with that match. We're fortunate that we do have some other partnering organizations that helped us not only to get the initial amount of resources to have a one-to-one match, but to start to incentivize with bonuses, and not even bonuses based on the most amount raised, but bonuses on who's the most collaborative, organizations that really collaborate the most with others. best with social media, aspects that really get the word out. So I think we were thrilled this year of how the community and the nonprofits responded to Match Day, because in one day, collectively, we were able to raise over $200,000, $217,000 to be exact. And that almost beat last year's by 100,000. And so you can kind of see how organizations are really understanding how they can use Match Day to the benefit of their organization. Examples are, Scranton Cultural Center. We highlighted some of the real standouts in terms of fundraising: Indraloka Animal Sanctuary, Carbondale Y, Lackawack, Catherine McCauley, just organizations that really took the Match Day theme and raised a significant amount of funds with it. So that was really the reason behind why we instituted Match Day and why we hope to continue to grow it, not only in terms of assets available, but also the regional reach. Another focus area or initiative of ours that is in our third year is called Women in Philanthropy. And Women in Philanthropy is a collective philanthropy model that we instituted under the realization that at the time frame there really wasn't a significant amount of funding applied to funding initiatives that impact women and girls, particularly underserved, economically challenged women and girls, with the note that there are so many families that are led by women, and that when you empower economically a woman, in many cases, you empower a family. So that's where the concept of Women in Philanthropy came from, but paired with the fact that research shows that there are so many women in philanthropy, women in doing philanthropy, women that are charitable, that not only do they want to give, they want to be a part of. They want to mentor. They want to be actively a part of where their charitable dollars are going. They want to drive decision making. So when we started this out, we came up with 4 themes based on 12 months of research, talking to nonprofits in our community, health providers, bankers, about where are the real gaps. Women in Philanthropy was never intended to recreate anything. It was intended to be a partnership bridging entity that kind of bridge the gaps of where some of the challenges are. So when we started this, we realized that there was a real need to help to stimulate entrepreneurial ventures in women, small business development in our region. So how can we be that catalyst for microloans where so many women are using their family budget to be able to create wealth for themselves and having that hard time getting maybe that $3,000, $5,000 loan. So how can we work in micro lending? The second piece is so many women were so close to a financial catastrophe if one more thing happened to their car, et cetera, et cetera. So how can we help to stimulate savings accounts where we have match savings accounts where women go through a 12-month educational seminar on how to do, one time a month on, banking, investment, rental agreements, et cetera. And then every dollar they save gets matched by the foundation. Another is STEAM education, the lack of women and girls going into STEAM fields, and the knowledge that that is such a growth area in terms of employment. So, how can we get this into the schools, partner with the public schools, create a desire for all students to pursue STEAM? And last but not least, where in health and wellness are there gaps? How is, for example, dental care or lack of access to dental care stopping women from advancing in their careers because of confidence issues, et cetera? How is transportation as a barrier to health access? So Women in Philanthropy funds and drives change around specific initiatives like I talked about. And we have about 90 or 100 supporters right now. And a lot of community partners, and I think we're seeing a lot of momentum. We've been able to launch eight businesses, I believe, so far, and there are many in the pipeline. 20 women graduated from the Financial Confidence Program. 2,000 students have received STEAM education, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really an exciting thing to be a part of, but it's not something that we could ever have done if we didn't have the community support and the interest of people in our community, because it's not only women, it's corporations, foundations, et cetera, that want to make an effort in those areas. So another initiative is the Northeastern Pennsylvania Equitable Transportation Council. And this really came out of a focus area of our understanding from a community foundation perspective that transportation is a challenge that impacts nonprofits and all of the clients they're served, regardless of whether they're trying to get to a job, whether they're trying to get to a doctor's appointment and have to wait 5 hours to get a ride back. It came from seeing grant applications where this was stated. It came from holding arts forums with the county where we had arts themes on arts and education, arts and the environment, arts and business, and then had to add a fourth day, arts and transportation, because of what came out of the conversations that transportation's a barrier. So we realized at that point that no one had really convened specifically on addressing transportation. And so we formed a partnership with the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia because they really have an interest in looking at what aspects of the community are impacting economic development and economic mobility. And so that partnership enabled us to leverage a variety of resources and to start to pull together a council, which is now at about 80 individuals on a regional basis that are looking at transportation from the aspects of economic development and workforce, social services and health, partnering with mass transit, and then just amplifying the idea of transportation in general and how people can access transportation. So we're actively working now on kind of a solutions-based process with that, where what the plan for that is, once we start to develop as a community the plan for how to move this forward in specific areas, that we then start to leverage the resources to do that. And in the midst, we're having these conversations with additional funders about resources that can be pulled in to do this. So again, I think that kind of illustrates how a community foundation can play that role. We were happy that we were able to actually bring someone on, Vivian, to be able to kind of spearhead that over the next 2 years. Maybe we will do this for the next 2 years, lead this effort, and hopefully by then we'll see things start to come out of that. So just another example of where we can pull the community together. Another area that we've really been focusing on, and that's because of what we're seeing not only in the community as a need, but also because community foundations nationally are really being encouraged to focus on not only providing grants, but providing the technical assistance and capacity building to help organizations build capacity, to augment and support their missions and the wonderful work that they're doing. So in 2012, we established an arm of the foundation that we branded as what we would be doing all of our capacity building work under, and that's the Center for Community Leadership and Nonprofit Excellence. And the goal of that is, as we survey the community and we work with partners to understand what a lot of these needs are in learning in specific areas, whether it's fundraising, whether it's advocacy, whether it's federal grant training, business planning, we work with other funders and partners to start to assemble technical assistance programs from nationally renowned experts and organizations that can help to provide these trainings. So that's really something that, through support of other foundations, particularly I'm going to acknowledge Moses Taylor because they've been a real driver in our ability to do capacity building, as well as from the Scranton Area Foundation committing resources to this, we've been able to continue to see this grow as an initiative. And so this year, I'm gonna just, don't mind the scattered nature of the dates on the right, but this kind of gives you an idea, and I'm putting this out there. I put this out to our board yesterday, just so people can kind of start to think. If this appeals to you or your organization, or you can think that this is something that any of these, you may want to think of putting them just on your calendar, because I don't think we've announced all of them yet. But, what have we done so far for the year? We've done Google Suite operations, and we just completed federal grants training, which was a 5-day intensive grants training by the Grantsmanship Center. They're one of the only organizations that does intense federal grants training, so we brought them out from California to do this. And people went through, they committed their time to a 5-day intensive training that hopefully takes people on a path that they could then be, apply for NIH, USDA, and other types of grants. But we instituted this because we realized that there was really a gap in organizations' ability to leverage what's out there in federal grant capability. So some of them coming up is advanced advocacy for NEPA nonprofits. That's going to be focused on DC as well as Harrisburg advocacy. So many nonprofits don't realize that you can be advocates. Your 501c3 doesn't preclude you from certain types of advocacy. So this is going to kind of be more educational in that regard. Benefiting from business planning is June 14th because a business plan is very different than a strategic plan. And that was a bit of a learning curve for me initially when I came in and the board charged me to do a strategic plan and now a business plan. So it's kind of one of those things when you start to think about business modeling, it's probably new to many nonprofit organizations. So this is something that's solely going to focus on business planning and business modeling for nonprofit organizations. Foundations of financial management, always something that we hear from the community that's a challenge in many organizations and never a topic that I think couldn't be too repetitive. So that'll be in September. Creating a fundraising culture. This will be interesting on September 28th because that's going to be Board Source. And Board Source did a presentation last year for nonprofits, but they did it generally on board governance. This is going to be solely on board fundraising, which is a topic that we hear is a challenge in many cases from a variety of reasons. It could be that many board members, they're committed in terms of serving many organizations. Maybe there's not an understanding of what a board member's role could be as a fundraiser or an ambassador. So this will hope to address that. Utilization-focused evaluation. This will be about program evaluations and ways to conduct specific evaluations for your programs, because the more that you can gather that kind of data and information, the more appealing it then becomes for you to be able to take that and go for additional funding or prove to your current funders that what you're doing is working. Talent management and human resources for nonprofit managers, and the point of that is HR is not often a funded role or discipline in many of our organizations. So how can we empower those that are in roles in our organizations or our leadership to really understand aspects of human resources and how to attract, retain, and motivate staff? And last but not least, succession planning for leadership transitions. Many organizations are changing. Retirements can happen at any time. People can be planning at different phases for that. But how can organizations be prepared for those changes and start thinking long-term about leadership? So that's what the focus area of that will be. So in case you want to get any of those on your calendar. I won't go too deep into Medallion Partners, but Medallion Partners was a focus area that we instituted because we realized so many nonprofit organizations and partners, like donors, they want to set up a fund and maybe work with the Scranton Area Foundation, but they don't want to lose that relationship with their investment advisor or financial manager. In the past, if they wanted to work with the Scranton Area Foundation, they'd have to provide the assets to the foundation, and the foundation would turn those assets over to be managed by our investment advisors. But Medallion Partners enables a nonprofit that wants to set up an endowment, a donor that wants to set up a donor-advised fund, to keep their investment advisor and still work with the Scranton Area Foundation. So it's a nice way that we're trying to expand our willingness to work with others in the community and meet them where they're at. So I appreciate very much NCAC highlighting our 2 community forums. I will say that we also added a third, just so you have that. The purpose of these community needs forums is so that, we want to hear from nonprofit organizations, talk about your missions, your challenges, what you're seeing as trends in the field, so that we can take this not only internally with our board and with donors that we work with, but also that we can make this available to other funders and other philanthropists that want to come and listen and hear about that. It's a forum for that. It's very much a public forum. And so what we would ask is, June 20th and June 21st are going to be for Lackawanna County organizations. They would be the date that are non-health related organizations, although you may see some wellness organizations focused in there. June 19th specifically will be for health and wellness organizations. And that will be not only Lackawanna County, that'll be Lackawanna, Luzerne, and Wyoming County. Why is that? Because we are partnering with the NEPA Health Care Foundation, who we manage. They're formerly the Mercy Hospital Foundation. And so because they do grant making across 3 counties in health and wellness, we want to have a forum for that. So I encourage you, if you haven't yet considered signing up for one of these dates, I would encourage you to definitely do that. We really want to hear from you, and we're hoping after that we can put out an aggregate kind of wrap up of what we've heard. Obviously, not only for the community, but for other funders as well. So I'll move into now, take a little sip of my coffee, and I'll move into the other 2 foundations that we manage that I'm going to talk about briefly. So the foundation that we've had the longest relationship with to date has been the foundation I just mentioned, and that's the Northeastern Pennsylvania Health Care Foundation, formerly the Mercy Hospital Foundation. They're in their 6th year of operation, and we're in our 5th year of that management relationship. They fund Lackawanna, Luzerne, and Wyoming County organizations working in health and wellness. The other foundation that we have been administering since 2016, which is a little bit newer in terms of the knowledge in the community about exactly what it is, and that's the Robert H. Spitz Foundation. That's a private foundation funded by an individual donor that has trustees. So what is the history of the Northeastern Pennsylvania Health Care Foundation? Well, the history is that it was formulated like many other health conversion foundations through the sale of a hospital and the retention of a community trust, in essence, to be able to benefit community health and wellness. The mission is to serve, it's specifically broad, health and wellness issues, the underserved, et cetera, in these 3 counties where the hospital was serving. One of the things about the NEPA Health Care Foundation is that it's specifically kept broad in the sense of what it will fund, because that's kind of the role that it wants to have. It wants to be able to be applicable to health literacy, to domestic violence, to a variety of areas that comprise what health and wellness is in a community. So our board, I'll go through our board. Our board is representative of community leaders. Some of you may have relationships with various ones or know them in the community, but they're very dedicated. They were here from when the foundation was incorporated, when it started. They served on the original board that was the Mercy Hospital Foundation, and I will say that they worked very hard at keeping these assets in the community. I've heard the stories. I know they're a very committed board. You have a lot of respect when you see how hard that they actually work to make sure that these assets were retained here. And they are very concerned about making sure that they're spent wisely. So 1 grant cycle annually with the NEPA Health Care Foundation. So that's one of the timely aspects about this presentation, is that the LOI for that grant cycle is June 1. On August 1st, the grant applications would be due, and then grant decisions are usually made in November. Grants can range of varying thresholds. I've seen them range significantly. It can be a $5,000 grant, and it can be a $100,000 grant. It can be 1 year, and it can be multi-year. There really is nothing that's specifically barred in terms of that, but there are specific aspects of things that are not funded. For example, research, academic research, et cetera, academic curriculum. I won't say capital is not funded because capital has been funded at specific levels, but I've seen more soft capital funded than I have, you know, a lot of building structures, et cetera. But I have seen that as well. So there really is a lot of diversity in what would be accepted. My suggestion would be with this is that if you have something that you think is on the fence and you're unsure of, have a conversation with myself, or probably more preferably would be Kathy Fitzpatrick, who really has a lot of insight in what some of those specific focus areas would be. But again, it really does run the gamut, and I think it's specifically kept that way as to not over-focus the foundation to allow room for that innovative nature and to really be of service. So I just want to put that on your radar. This is the grant cycle coming up, and we would have to have an LOI in before the actual application could come in. A bulk of the commitment of the Northeastern Pennsylvania Health Care Foundation is made to fostering the concept of physician retention in our region. This was started with the Northeastern Pennsylvania Health Care Foundation Scholars Program that they instituted 4 years ago with the Geisinger Commonwealth School of Medicine, formerly TCMC at that time, to really ensure that we're enabling students from these 3 counties, Lackawanna, Luzerne, and Wyoming, to be able to pursue a medical education in our region, and specifically fund those students who indicate that they really want to stay in our region and practice medicine following the completion of their education. So it was specially designed with Geisinger Commonwealth School of Medicine to ensure that the rubric of how these students are selected show community service, that they really have a penchant for community service, that they are from specific counties, that they indicate when they're applying, you know, diligently, that they really have this interest in staying in the region. It's specifically designed to ensure that, because the foundation made a commitment not only to the medical school, but because they feel that long-term that is a major impact and driver of the health in the region is access to physicians. I can say to date, I think it's been working out swimmingly, in that the students that really have gone through it, and there's currently 8 scholars, are really remarkable students that I think I can say that the board is thrilled as who's been selected, and really the dedication that they've already showed to the region. So I can say that I think that's something that's working and will likely continue to work. You can see the classes right now. Doing a lot of good research and community-based research in the community too. So one of the things I didn't mention with the Scranton Area Foundation that I did here is I can say to date that I think about $18 million has been given to our community from the Scranton Area Foundation. And you think about all the years that we've been in operation, but when we started out, you know, we started out at $1 million, and the growth took time. So in later years, the distributions have been much more significant than probably early on. The NEPA Health Care Foundation in the past 4 years, or 5 years, my apologies, have given $3.5 million to the 3 counties. So you can kind of get an idea of the distribution rates. And last, but certainly not least, is the Robert H. Spitz Foundation. The Robert H. Spitz Foundation was started by a philanthropist in our region who was an entrepreneur. He owned various Arby's restaurants. He was a self-made investor, and he lived in Dixon City. And his home is still the foundation residence. It's still the foundation headquarters, but the work is done through the Scranton Area Foundation. The majority of the trustees for the foundation are out of the area. They are colleagues, relatives, friends of Mr. Spitz. The parameters of what the foundation funds were set on aspects of what Mr. Spitz prioritized in his life, and they were set in conjunction with the trustees as well as the foundation providing guidance in that regard. The foundation funds organizations that predominantly serve Lackawanna County right now. I can't say that'll always be the case, but that is the case right now. But that doesn't preclude organizations that are in Luzerne, et cetera, from applying, because I have seen organizations be successful as long as there's still a connectivity of some kind to Lackawanna County. So last year was the first year of the Spitz Foundation's grant making, and there was one grant cycle. And it was, and it continues to still be, an invite-only grant cycle. But this year there are 2 grant cycles. And the first one, the application deadline for that is June 1. And that grant cycle is all about breaking the cycle of poverty. It's all about aspects related to anti-poverty. And so, again, it's invite only, but I would encourage that if there are that if you have not received an invite, because again, there are only a certain number of organizations that, when our knowledge is of anti-poverty, that we would focus on. But if you feel that you really have an anti-poverty initiative in areas of, it could be in housing, it could be in transportation, it could be in education, that you could contact Kathy, because we would want to have that on our radar to make sure that we're not ignoring that when we're providing this recommendations to the trustees. The second grant cycle is going to be in the fall, and that's going to be August 1 for an LOI deadline. That's going to be a very different grant cycle. That's going to be animal welfare, because Mr. Spitz was an animal lover. It's going to be Jewish culture and history, because there was a penchant for, protecting the integrity of the Jewish culture and recognizing the history of the Jewish history, and so there's going to be a focus on that. So organizations that are doing work in that regard, and also veterans, organizations that are doing work that are serving veterans, that are involved in providing service to honor and serve veterans, is going to be another focus of the second cycle. So I put that out there because some people had thought, okay, you had a grant cycle last year and you funded animals and you funded veterans and you funded Jewish history, but you didn't announce it. No, because this year they're doing 2 separate cycles, but this way you have this on your radar. The Spitz Foundation also does not put out funding parameters. I've seen them range. I've seen them range again from $5,000 to $200,000. So my suggestion with that would be, if you have a specific project that you would like considered, and if you are questioning what level potentially that would be at if you were to come in, that's what we're here for, to ask, to suggest. We can never say exactly how it's going to go, because we are not the sole decision makers, but we can provide guidance based on what we've seen. So in 1 year, you can see the foundation has been very generous already. $652,325 given to nonprofits just last year. So there is a lot of funding available. It is a great resource for our region. So I hope that gives you a little bit of an overview of what the community foundation model is, what it's shifting towards, our need for continued partnerships in the community with nonprofits, with other funders, with philanthropists, and also what our role is as serving as administrators of other foundations, and how we can make sure that we're keeping these resources in the community. So that closes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Just a couple of other questions I asked Laura in advance of the meeting, more pertaining to her grant making and some of the things she sees at the foundations she represents. What are your biggest frustrations when it comes to engaging you about funding or submitting a grant from the nonprofit audience? Her answer was annual requests for the same project or program multiple years in a row. So again, we all know that grant makers are here to help us launch programs, help us seed programs, but sustainability is very often left up to us. So that's something we here at NCAC a lot from a lot of the grant makers that we deal with as well. What's the most rewarding experience, your favorite award or project that you've had since being a grant maker or representing the foundations? Her answer was being able to spearhead the development of Women in Philanthropy initiative and the NEPA Equitable Transportation Council. So those were her 2 favorite experiences since moving back to the area and working with the Scranton Area Foundation. So thank you. With that, we're a little bit behind schedule, but we've built in some extra time. We'll take a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and hear from the rest of our panelists. Thank you.